allow Norman Kamalo and Elaine Lazarus to participate in the executive session, and to reconvene an open session at the conclusion of executive session.
So,
Second.
Okay, I'm going to roll call vote because it relates to executive session.
Muriel Kramer, yes. Mary Jo Lefreniere, yes.
Shadi Manan, yes.
Amy Redabush, yes. Okay, and we'll be back shortly. Okay, good evening. My name is Amy Roder-Bush, and I reconvene the select board meeting for January 10th, 2023. I call the meeting to order. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Rice. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is our public forum. Please note that each person will have up to 2 minutes to speak. At public forum, please start by stating your name and address. And we will start with people in the room, and then we will move to people who might be on Zoom and want to make a public comment. Is there anyone present in the meeting room who would like to speak at public forum tonight? Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I appreciate the town's efforts.
Name and address.
Oh, my apologies. Patrick O'Brien, 13 Ray Street. Again, I appreciate the town continuing to look into ways to make public safety more efficient in the town of Hopkinton, as well as possibly reducing the tax burden on its residents. It was nice to hear from retired Chief Moran from Southborough on Wednesday tell us that she has spoken with the town, possibly going back 13 years ago, regarding the topic of regionalization. So it's nice to know that Hopkinton is continuing to do its due diligence. I also appreciate Fire Chief Miller's involvement in this process as he looks into it, as he states, from a fire service perspective. I look at this regionalization from a police perspective. The town entered into this feasibility study with 6 other towns. When the study was completed, 3 towns backed out. No reason was disclosed to us when asked why those towns backed out. Some members of this board went to visit a rec center recently. The town held a question and answer period last Tuesday, an informational session on Wednesday, and members reported back to the residents that joining a rec center would not save the residents of Hopkinton any money. Between the feasibility study, the question and answer period, the informational session on Wednesday, the residents were never given any compelling reason why public safety would be more efficient if they joined the rec center. 3 items that were mentioned in the study that has been brought up in this conversation. Interoperability. That's the ability for towns to talk together on the same radio frequency. As Detective DeBoer told the residents on Wednesday, Hopkinton...
Sorry. That is 2 minutes if you want to, but you can, if you want to wrap up.
Okay, I'll wrap up.
Yep.
He told the residents on Wednesday, Hopkinton currently has that capability to talk to those residents. Enhanced mutual aid. That's towns in the rec center helping each other. Chief Miller told us on Tuesday that Hopkinton would be looking to the towns closest to the incident for mutual aid, not necessarily if they were in the rec center. I'll end with this, members of the board. Our dispatchers have had a cloud over their head for over a month. Some of them have families, some of them have mortgages, some of them have been valuable employees for over 20 years. I ask this board to show its leadership tonight and in this process so we can relieve that stress from them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak at public comment tonight? Go ahead.
Good evening to the whole board and townspeople. My name is Don Collins. I live at 45 Teresa Road. I am a 38-year member of the fire department here in town. Amongst other, my real job, I'm a fire chief at Logan Airport, but I do bring some outside perspective, I believe. I know what goes on in town. I'm pretty well versed in that. I was just a little disappointed the other night that I didn't hear many questions that the citizens had that were answered. It was like, oh, we don't have that answer yet, whatever. And I just think that the town, with all, due respect for you people, you can't make an informed decision without a lot of those questions being answered. And it was more than half the questions had no answer to it. And again, I'll reiterate what I said the other night, is what is the hurry? And I've heard, different things, and, there might be grant money involved, and there's a deadline for that. And I've also heard that, well, we'll have a chance to be in on the ground floor and making the decisions. Any decisions, like on the policies and whatnot in the rec center, are pretty much steered by, dispatch policies that are made at a way higher level than us, different regions, you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time you open one of these. And my main concern with this is the manning. Supposedly minimum manning, we're going to have like 7 people, 8 people on certain shifts, but you go down as low as 2 and a supervisor. And that's barely more than we have now. In the day shift now, we have 2 and a supervisor. And I think that until we get all the answers, till we're totally educated with real answers and not, I thought the other night pretty much was a waste of everybody's time. The presentation was horrible. There was no handouts. The PowerPoint was horrible. People couldn't read slides. I thought it was very kind of put together haphazardly at the last minute. And I think that it wasn't a true representation of what this town deserves in being educated and being informed on some of the issues. And I'm not totally against it, but why are we rushing into it, okay? And that's my stance, and I don't think, like I said the other night, if you're one of the first towns in, you're not going to get a free fire truck for having that. But I appreciate your time, and, hopefully, my message gets through.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's also a person on the Zoom. Is there anyone else in the meeting room that would like to speak at public comment tonight? Okay, there's someone on Zoom with a hand raised. The phone number ends in 2096. Okay.
Hello, can I speak?
Yes, please go ahead.
Ann Karnowski, living at Fairview Estates. I've been trying to establish the fact that I have 2 service balance dogs that are allowed to go with me anywhere I go. And I would like to use the senior bus to get to the dog park with them. And it's more than just exercising the dogs, which is very important, but my friends are at the dog park. So I don't think that I should be barred from using the bus with these dogs. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else in the room or on Zoom that would like to speak? Okay. All right, so that will be the end of public comment for tonight. And then we do have a time-sensitive issue because our new town position, the employee has to leave to go join a different Zoom shortly, so we could do that one first. Right? Okay. So we're going to skip the consent agenda for now. I'll come back to it later. So, okay, the select board will consider confirming the town manager's appointment of Anna Rogers as the environmental and inspectional services coordinator in the land use planning and permitting department. Mr. Kamala, would you like to introduce, or Elaine?
Yes, through the chair, I have the utmost pleasure to introduce Anna Rogers, who has actually been with the town for now over 12 years. How many years? 17 years, yes. As the town's next environmental and inspectional services coordinator. With your permission, I'll let Elaine do the introduction, and Elaine is actually ready to do the introduction. I need to celebrate the fact that Anna represents what this community is about. Commitment to the community, going above and beyond, and more spectacularly, she also, amongst its regular duties, has been able to advance herself professionally, and that's how she has qualified to be in this position.
Okay. Thank you.
just want to say a little bit about the position itself. It's in the Land Use Department, and it's divided between professional assistance to the Conservation Administrator and the Conservation Commission and the Building Inspector with respect to inspections and liaison with the Fire Department and other departments regarding interdepartmental permitting. Kind of a catch-all, but a really interesting new position for someone who really wants to work in conservation and building. And that's what Anna is supremely interested in and is very good at. Worked with Anna for 17 years in the land use field, and she excels at customer service. One of the things that came out in the interview was her excellent customer service, her deep knowledge of the subject matter, both in building and in conservation, and she has a genuine interest in the subject matter, and learning more and serving the community. So we are very excited to have Anna move up to this position.
Great. And I see Maria is on the Zoom. Maria, did you have anything to add?
And not only that, it was a competitive process, and the committee that was on the panel is Elaine Hinchera-Macaulay, who's the Conservation Administrator, Tom Poirier, who's one of our fire prevention officers representing fire, Nicole Bratzos, who's a fairly new, she is an inspector of construction, utilities, and permitting, myself, and HR generalist Kristen Merrill.
Great, thank you. Do board members have any questions or comments?
So the only comment that I have is that I have been the beneficiary many times of your wonderful customer service. Really excited to see, first of all, really appreciative that you've been with Hopkinton for so long. It's really a wonderful testament to you, and also feels like a wonderful testament for town hall management and staff as well. So I'm glad that you're finding your professional development and future here. I appreciate the work that you have done, and I very much look forward to seeing what this new position means for you, and appreciate that you're here.
Thank you. Najo?
I'm delighted to see someone in town who's been working in a particular department take an interest in a new step and a new opening, and continue to develop in their career with the town, and I definitely appreciate that from you. I think this is a very nice new position, and I'd like to see you do well in it, and I'm sure you will, because you've done well in everything else you've done for the town. And I think with land use, it's just going to be more and more important as we go along, given the growth of the community. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your 17 years of service, and all the, I think, testimony certainly talks high of your qualification, your service, your customer representation, and all the good work that you have done. So thank you for your work and service. And it's great to know that you actually have grown into this role and are ready for this new challenge, and you have earned it. So congratulations on that. And I look forward to your continued growth and continued work on our challenges for this town. Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, I think, not to repeat everything, but we really do appreciate you stepping up and taking this role, and we understand you have to get to a Conservation Commission meeting following this. So, Annie, thank you, and we're glad that you're able to take on this position. Thank you to everybody for providing the information. So.
Thank you so much. I really look forward to continuing the work with the Land Use Department as well as the interdepartment's work.
Okay, so we need a motion.
Congratulations to you, and congratulations to us.
All right.
Hold on.
Usually we need a motion to confirm the town manager's appointment of Anna Rogers as the Environmental and Inspectional Services Coordinator.
I move to confirm the town manager's appointment of Anna Rogers as Environmental and Inspectional Service Coordinator.
A second?
Okay, and we can do a voice vote because her phone is not here, I believe. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstain? Okay, so that is all set. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, and then we could do the Eagle Scout recognition. Are they all here today? Okay, so I think, are all the Eagle Scouts here tonight? I see two, for sure. Okay. Okay, so the select board will recognize new Eagle Scouts, Kyle Fischesser, is that right? And Chris Hawley and Dan McCabe. And so I'd like to ask those who are present to come up to the table. And is one on Zoom? Is it?
Yeah, he should be on.
So John let's see, there's a John McCabe on the Zoom.
That might be Dan.
That might be Dan, so could we liven up John McCabe?
Oh, Dan McCabe.
Was listed as John, but it might be the same computer. Okay, so welcome. We're going to, one at a time, the select board members are going to thank you, talk about your projects and maybe ask you some questions, then we'll present the certificates and we'll do a group photo, I think. Okay, so first, Kyle, I think Shaidu is going to present Kyle's certificate.
Thank you, Kyle, for your wonderful work. So Kyle built warm-up pitching mounds and home plate areas on the side of each field at EMC Park. Fences were already built, so he and his team dug out the grass around each fence and then filled the area in with an infield dirt mix. Using rakes and tampers, they packed the dirt in and shaped it into a moon shape to serve as a bullpen or a warm-up area for the Little League players to use before they enter the game to pitch. The beneficiary was the Hopkinton Little League, and he worked with them to ensure the moons will be ready for full use before the start of the next Little League season. Wonderful work and a lot of actual work with the dirt and physical work on the field. So thank you for doing a wonderful work. It tells a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
very
just
much.
wanted to also ask you, what inspired you to choose this project and do this?
Yeah, so I played baseball my whole life, and I played in the Little League, so this was just like a great chance for me to be able to give back to them, and it was really fun because I knew some of the kids I was working with, like through Scouts, and they'll actually be able to like use the mounds this spring because they're still in Little League, so that was like the biggest factor for me.
Wonderful. I'm sure all the pitchers will remember you.
Okay, and can I ask, since I used to sit on the Eagle Board of Reviews for Troop 1, what was your most challenging aspect of the project and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, so the most challenging, the weather was like big because we had piles of dirt that were just in there at EMC, and the water would kind of like run down the mounds each time, so we had to redo it a little bit, and then the weeds would keep coming up, so that was a big factor. And then just some like timing with the baseball season going on while we were building it. It was hard to like find the time to get everyone over there to finish it.
Great. Well, it sounds like you learned a lot. Okay, then I think Mary Jo is going to present to Chris Hawley.
Chris?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a special request from a friend in town, and all of you will get this. We wanted, Mr. Riley wanted to make sure I offered you a couple quacks. Oh, see? I didn't get the message in time to have a little rubber ducky up here, but he was hoping that I would do that. But anyway, congratulations, honestly. I'm going to say this to every single person. I know exactly what goes into a scout career, right? And also the penultimate project. And it is not easy, and it is something that you will put on your resume, I presume, for the rest of your life. So it's quite an accomplishment in your school years, truly.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary Jo, you can go present to Chris.
Can I ask you guys one thing first? What troops do you belong to? 1, 4?
We're both Troop 4.
You're both Troop 4. Okay, good. Now, Chris, I love your project. Chris built a large shelter at Bay Path Humane Society to protect the dogs and allow for more use during the summer and winter seasons and during inclement weather. A previous construction had been built there, but did not stand the test of time. It was important that the shelter was durably built with concrete footings and strappings that allow them to take full advantage of the space. So this is a project near and dear to my heart because I love Bay Path. I have an animal from Bay Path right now that I got just before COVID, and I have to say he's a lifesaver for me. His name is Mac, and I love him to pieces. And I love going down about Bay Path and seeing the animals and seeing what's down there, and wishing I could bring them all home myself. So I appreciate anybody who takes care of creatures that are considered less than we are. So want to tell me how you did it, why you decided on it, please?
First off, thank you for that comment. And yeah, so I was really trying to find a project that I was passionate about. First, I wanted to do something like land use, but that's something that we do a lot of in our troop. A lot of Eagle projects are around that. So I got in contact with my scout, like one of my advisors, Mr. Riley, and he got me involved with BayPath. I've always had a deep passion for animals. We have a lot of dogs in our house. So they said, hey, we had the shelter. It didn't like stand up. Like they fell down. They had to get a new one. They wanted a new one. So I worked with them, came up with a plan. They liked it. And we made a new one that I think is still there to this day. So I'm really proud of that too, because I'm not a very good engineer, like with my tools. So I don't know. Had a lot of help from the adults on that.
So you learned a lot during the experience, I think.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, I thank you very much. Anyone else have a comment?
I was just going to ask, what was your biggest challenge with this particular project, and what did you learn from it?
I think my biggest challenge was probably working with adults, because compared to other projects, it was a lot more oriented towards adults. I had to work a lot more with them to get my vision across. They have a lot more skill in carpentry and other areas that I myself wasn't used to, so they try to take the lead. So it was a challenge of like trying to make sure that the scouts stayed involved.
That you were the leader. Great, thank you very much.
Okay. Can I ask you, just in keeping with this being a big life accomplishment at a very young age, how does that, tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit about why that was important to you, why it's important to you that you were able to do this? Get your Eagle Scout.
I think getting Eagle Scout was just the culmination of a life-changing experience. I mean, I started at the end of my 5th grade. I learned like a lot of valuable morals and like life skills, made a lot of friends, and that's why people respect it the way it is, I think, because you learn so much that you carry it throughout the rest of your life.
Awesome job, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Muriel's going to present to Dan McCabe.
Young Dan McCabe. You on the Zoom?
He's on the Zoom.
So this actually gives me extremely great pleasure. Dan McCabe is a young man whose older brother got his Eagle Scout when my youngest son got his, and has been somebody we've known for quite a long time and is a parishioner at our church, so I appreciate being able to do this. So Danny refurbished a prayer garden at St. Matthew's Parish in Southborough. The garden was overgrown and the statue was cracked and falling down. Danny worked with a landscaper to install a new stone wall with a statue cemented on top of the wall. New plants and bushes for the shaded area were planted. The whole area was weeded and mulched. The patio was cleaned. The stone walk leading to the prayer garden was weeded, and new stones were spread. Finally, a new bench was placed. The refurbishment created a better space for parishioners to visit and pray. So I would like to ask what your inspiration was for this particular project for your Eagle Scout Award.
First off, thank you for that. And we've been members of the church for a while, and I just said both my brothers did their Eagle projects there, and I kind of wanted to give back to the church as well. So when I found out there was a project that the father needed there, I decided to help them out and wanted to give people kind of quiet space to reflect and pray if they needed it. And it was kind of old and run down, so it just needed to be refurbished a little bit.
Well, congratulations. I'm sure it's going to be very appreciated. I know we appreciate it. And congratulations. This is a major accomplishment, and thank goodness you did it, because your 2 older brothers did it, right? You got to get the job done.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, and then can I just ask you the same question? Like, what was the biggest challenge you came across while working on the project, and what did you learn from it?
I think it was kind of the timing of everything. When I finished the fundraising, it was kind of just the start of winter, and the working around the contractors and the scouts was kind of difficult because we couldn't really have them there at the same time with the big power tools, and cement, so we had to do it on separate days, but find days that would work for both. That was a little bit difficult.
Okay, well, scheduling is a skill you will need all your life, so I'm glad you had that experience. All right, thank you. And then I think now we will present the certificates and we can do a group photo.
Nice.
Okay?
So it'll be hard for me to present your certificate, Dan, but it is here at Town Hall for you when you want it.
So we can come up here, I think, right?
Yeah, I guess maybe get me on the screen in the background. Oh, there you go. We can do that. And how about this?
Mr. Riley.
Quack, quack. Quack, 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 quack. All right, so I'll have the Eagle Scouts maybe? Is there any way we can get Dan on the screen behind us? There he is, okay.
Nice job, congratulations, gentlemen.
Thank you for all the good work. Thank you.
Thanks for your work.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah.
Norman has been entrusted with the additional certificate. It's no longer in my control. Adesto.
That's Dan's.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we had skipped over the consent agenda, so let's come back to that real quick before we move on. So the consent agenda was approving the minutes of the December 20th, 22 meeting and accepting a gift of $300 from the Legacy Farms neighborhood to the fire department. Would anyone like to make any comments or a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second?
Okay, and a big thank you to the Legacy Farms neighborhood for the donation. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstain? Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the Regional Emergency Communications Center. Okay, the select board will consider Hopkins' participation in a regional emergency communications center, reviewing feasibility study results, correspondence, and information received to date. No vote on the intermunicipal agreement will take place at tonight's meeting. So this is really, we've been taking in a lot of feedback both from residents and attending the sessions. We've visited the rec center in Norfolk, and we visited our own dispatch center tonight. This is kind of our first chance to kind of express what we have. There's a lot of information for us to digest because we're not dispatchers ourselves. It's not really our area of expertise. So this is kind of our first chance to get some of our questions out there and make some of our comments. So did you want to provide any introduction, Norman, or you want us to go into our questions and comments that are remaining?
Yeah, if it may be helpful, again, I want to thank everybody who's attending tonight to share your suggestions, comments, and concerns on this topic. One of the issues that has been raised consistently, I think, revolves around how does the rec benefit Hopkinton? And I think that may be a good starting point. And what might be helpful in that regard is perhaps a very brief description from staff as to what would happen in a rec versus how calls are currently processed. And I do have an illustration. We just put it together now, and we'll be sharing this publicly through our web page. And I think the key here is how does a rec center process a 911 call in the context of Hopkinton, where we are now experiencing multiple calls coming in one after the other. Especially also considering that we currently only have 2 communication staff plus the supervisor to handle the incoming calls. And thus, I think the perception, therefore, is that a communication center, if appropriately staffed, I'm not making any assumptions regarding the numbers that have been included in the feasibility study. I've said it publicly. I think if Hopkinton was to move forward, we would be looking at substantially different numbers from the ones in the feasibility study. And thus, at a rec center, we're looking at multiple employees being present at any given shift to respond to calls. 1 or 2 calls, incidents can take local resources over the capacity. An example, we have 2 communicators working on a cardiac arrest and simultaneously processing a violent subject at a traffic stop. Other example could be multiple calls about an accident on 495 and a medical incident. The other example could be 2 auto accidents with injuries at the same time. Obviously, with 2 staff and a supervisor, this can be a challenge in places like Hopkinton, smaller towns. And thus, the basic premise is, with towns coming together, working together, that will allow for adequate staffing to respond to such incidents. We have also stated that in a rec center, there is more specialization in terms of roles. Yes, I'll be the first advocate for cross-training. However, in a rec center, cross-training is done within the context of specific specializations. There are also opportunities for career growth. We have very talented, gifted communicators here in Hopkinton. If Hopkinton is to move forward in this discussion, what I will be looking for are opportunities for career growth that may not be presented here in Hopkinton. If it's okay, through the chair, let me ask the fire chief to walk us through the different scenarios where you have 2 staff versus staff that are in a rec and how they will respond to a specific call. And Ben, do you mind lighting up the PowerPoint? Slide number 2, current versus possible future use of staff.
Ben, can you click it again, please? And one more time. All right, good evening. So to just expound a little bit off what the town manager is stating. So currently today, we're just going to look at our Hopkinton model. We're looking at 2 communicators. We're looking at a police dispatcher and a fire dispatcher, one dedicated solely to each side, but they do and can cross and help out if one is busier than the other. Using our existing staff, our full-time employees, create dedicated roles in a regional communications center. What we're looking at for the future is supervisor 24/7. Again, that would provide us oversight, coverage, and first tactical channel, which I'll explain here quickly. Call taking, 911 EMS. That also, 911 can include both police and fire. You have 3 communicators. Police dispatching, 2 communicators, and fire EMS dispatching, 2 communicators. We're talking about a tactical channel, and what we're looking at is to, if a major incident happens on the police side, a major incident happens on the fire side, that one dispatcher or supervisor, however it is designated, would be moved over to handle that situation. And we did see that in the Norfolk wreck, the Metacomet, when we went and visited. They actually had an incident the other night on Sunday night where the dispatcher for the Rentham fire was totally running that incident, and the other dispatchers picked up and took the other call volume and assisted with mutual aid and moving resources. So that's our current versus possible future staff that we're talking about. Ben, next one, please. So call processing and key assumptions, again, national standards are based on larger centers with dedicated roles, i.e. call takers, fire resource dispatchers, patrol dispatchers, tactical channels. Go ahead, Ben, you can load it right up, Ben, please. Thank you. So as we know, our dispatchers and our communication system can get very overloaded very quickly. The community is growing. We're seeing a rise in our call volume both on police and fire sides. Really simple, the primary call taker for our communication center is our police dispatcher with the fire dispatcher listening in. If it's a fire incident, the fire dispatcher will gather the information necessary. So 911 call comes in, we're looking at our call taker, may stay on the call up until the units arrive the call is, at the caller's side. We're doing, if it happens to be an EMD, a medical call, they're going to EMD until the proper resources arrive. What may end up happening and can happen sometimes is with where it gets busy and both call takers have to be on the call, or one call taker has to stay, or if we have a motor vehicle accident, we all know you can get multiple calls for a motor vehicle accident. Resources are trying to go out. When you have multiple call takers, i.e. like again we saw at the Metacomment or we saw in the SEMREC, you have dedicated call takers. So you have 2 people taking the call or 3 people taking the call. Then you can move down and you have your assignments for your dispatchers who are assigned to police and fire. And, you know, if it's a police matter, those dispatchers who are assigned to those communities will have that call or that incident, and same with the fire side. The dispatchers who are assigned to the fire side will have that incident as well, too. By having these layers and having these staff, it allows the dispatchers to, A, focus on their job task and not have to strictly multitask, and B, it's going to move resources quicker, i.e. so if we're call taking, the call taker can stay, the resource allocated dispatcher, whether it be police or fire, can start moving that response quicker versus trying to stay on the line, gather more information, and try to get the call out.
In fact, if we may, I just want to underscore that point because it hasn't been stated clearly in our prior discussions, namely that there's a dedicated dispatcher who would work instantaneously in the tactical response to the incident. Okay. That's what we wanted to share.
Okay.
Again, because this question has been asked, what would look different on the ground? And we felt that this was important.
Yes. Thank you, Jay.
So I guess we should just dig right in with our questions and comments. You know, I certainly have some after the last forum. Just, who would like to go first?
Starting, or I'm happy to start.
Okay.
First of all, I think that I have responded, and I know Amy said the same thing to everybody who has emailed us. As always, we appreciate people letting us know where they stand on something. And if you haven't heard back, please also let us know, because we want to make sure people's concerns are addressed. So I primarily wanted to say a couple of things first. I do have some questions that I'm gonna state afterwards. Primarily, and I don't think I'm unusual, I'm centering my decision-making thoughts and processes on the safety and well-being of Hopkinton residents first and foremost. And I think that that's true for everybody in the room who has weighed in on this discussion, even if you're on different sides of this discussion. People feel very strongly about the safety of Hopkinton residents. I also want to make sure I say this, that the way this has rolled out has been very difficult for a small number of our very valued employees. So I want to make sure that you know that I'm respectfully considering that what I said was the people are people who are affected most by the decisions we might make. So business decisions are always business decisions, but they also affect real people, and I want to make sure I say this. It's real people that we value very highly and who have served this town very well. And I want you to know that that is centered in our considerations. I know I'm not speaking just for myself. And then we also find ourselves needing to support the needs and decision-making and expertise of our professional staff, thinking in terms of business decisions. So while I'm certainly not opposed to change, I also don't think that there's a reason that we necessarily change for the sake of change, right? So I have spent an awful lot of time talking to people, and I'm happy to continue doing that. There is some information that I need more concretely before I can even think that I know what I need to know to make a decision. So first, I want to know the timeline and the schedule, and that's primarily for the people who are most directly involved. I want to know when the decision is going to be made so that we all know when we're going to know what is going to happen this year, right? So if we're making the decision in January, if we're making the decision in February, I want to know a date certain when that's going to happen. So I also want to clarify, I've been one of the people who have said what I heard was that this is not necessarily a less expensive option, but I want to make sure that everybody knows that I don't think we've got the financial comparative information, and that's something that I have to have before I vote. I need to know what the financial impacts have been for towns that have made this decision and how it compares with what we are spending now for our emergency services. I have this habit of taking notes, so I took notes as people were talking. So I also need to know, before I make this decision, how we are going to think about staffing the rec center, and that's two questions. One is, we heard, and it's only from one regional rec center, we heard that they feel that they didn't appropriately set staffing when they started. So I want to understand that fully. Is there a successful rec center out there? How did other rec centers, they're not the first one, we're not going to be the second one. So what has been the experience of rec centers in Massachusetts when they've regionalized? Have they kept to schedule? Have they kept to cost? How have they thought about staffing? Have they been successful with staffing? I don't know if this is possible. We know that if we regionalize, that all the dispatchers in the affected towns won't have jobs at the rec center. I think we need to say that out loud. We know that that's true. So I need to know if there's a way for us to protect people if they are hired into the rec center, to protect their seniority and so forth within the 4 towns that are participating. I don't know if that's possible or not, but that's something that I'd like to know about. I'd also like to make sure that this town is prepared to level up with transition supports for the folks that will find themselves in a really hard position, right? I think I found out that so I do feasibility studies for a living, and I found this one not complete, right? And I think I found out, right, I'm talking to everybody, that the state paid for it, so it begins to come into sharper focus for me, and we didn't spend any money on it, is that right?
That is correct, other than our time.
Yeah, yes. And so the information that's in there is not necessarily problematic, but for me there isn't comparative work in there. There isn't comparative data for exactly what I was asking for like cost. What have towns' experiences been in regionalizing, and you know, again, schedule and cost, and then also data to compare. So also we heard that you can't compare data from call response times from what we're experiencing now to what we would expect to experience with a rec center. So we need to have some metric for decision making in there. Like, we need to know how we know we're going to improve our efficiencies versus somebody And it's not that I don't believe the person at the rec center, I do, they're professional guys, but how do we know that our numbers are going to improve in a way that it makes sense for us to do this? And then, I guess, I also want to know what the relative advantage of is being on the ground floor, being one of the initial communities, or joining. Like, did we consider joining an existing rec center? Is there a reason we want to be part of a brand-new rec center, right? What are the relative advantages? What are the pros and cons? And then the other question I have is about the police station and staffing the police station, and that's something we need to have a strategy for. If we were to make a decision to regionalize, we need a strategy for that police station operating in the same way that people in this town have become accustomed to and that we all want. And I just want to say that we've heard a lot of stories, and I have my own. I have called 911 myself in Hopkinton, and I have been very gratified to know that the people I'm calling are responding in the ways that I have experienced responses, right? So when we talk about this, it's very hard to separate out our emotions from the business and the facts, right? So we do need metrics and measures so that we're making a decision that we can really, know that we are making a decision that needs to be made today or whenever we make it, and that we are definitely investing in a solution that we know today or whenever we make the decision is one that we believe is the right one, right? So I know regionalization is coming. I think we all know that. I just don't know if it's necessarily the right call today, and I just want to make sure that people know that I'm keeping an open mind, but there's a lot of information I feel like we don't have yet. That's me.
Mary Jo, did you want to go next, or would you like me to?
Okay. Well, I've been kind of on the same page that Mary was on. There's so much information, and I've looked at things as one way and then looked at things another way. I have read a lot of emails and talked to a lot of people. There's a lot of emotion involved in this also, which is great. I mean, it's fine, but I am sure that technology is a future, is a way of the future. However, in saying that, I am really unsure that Hopkinton is ready to make that leap at this moment, given the information that I have. However, what I would like to know is this rec, is it absolutely determined that if Hopkinton joins, it goes forward? What if we don't join now? Are they still going to go forward with the rec?
Last we talked to the other three towns, they seem to be intending to go forward without us. But I don't know that they've made their final decision, though. Is that correct?
That is correct.
They haven't made a final decision either. Having gone down to the police station tonight, wow, I'm really, really impressed at the level of professionalism we have right here in Hopkinton. We just spent, like $30,000 upgrading the system in the last year or two, and I think that Megan's done a wonderful job, and I just don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I want to continue looking at this. I want to continue seeing how it goes. There are other ones besides Norfolk, that, I mean, a couple of our, but I don't think that, I understand tonight that Holliston may be joining Holbrook. What's the connection there? I want to be, in the right area, the right group of people, the right towns together, and I'm not sure that this is it yet, and I have not fully made up my mind, and just keep the cards and letters coming. I guess that's all I can say.
I do believe I've heard that Sherburne also has joined one that's many, many, many miles away.
I heard that today.
From Sherburne, not a bordering town. Okay.
Well, you know, like other people have said, what other towns do is what they do. What Hopkinton does is Hopkinton, and we've always kind of felt that way. But I understand they might be opening a rec in Framingham to join. And I'm just hearing from people who are in one and love it and not love it. And it's a very, very, very difficult decision. There's so much information, a lot of reading we're doing, and we're trying. We're going to try to make the very best decision for the town of Hopkinton.
Thank you. Shall I do them? Do you want to go? Do you want to go? Oh, you want me to? Okay. I've taken notes and they're kind of out of order, so I'll try to not repeat too much what others have said. But yeah, I am still not made up my mind. I think there's a lot of questions that I still have. And I did want to say about our meeting the other night, it did get very heated and passionate at times. And I do want to assure everyone, just like Mary Jo and Muriel said, that we all have, I think, are trying to have everyone's best interest in Hopkinton and the region. And I have to believe that the select board members of Southborough, Westborough, and Grafton also have the best interests of the whole region in mind and their towns, and that we're all trying to do the best thing that we can, but it is a difficult decision. I was very impressed with our own dispatcher dispatch center that we visited tonight, and I know we have a lot of best practices and we're up to date on new technology. And I thought the Norfolk one also seemed very good, that they worked well together and we had a good model. Let's see, and then I guess one of the main questions I don't think anyone else has brought up too, so if regional dispatch is coming and we're going to have to join one sooner or later, and I think we don't know how soon we might be forced to, like, are we better off having more control now? Like, would we get to help pick the software in the IMA if we started one now? Would we have more say? Could we specify that our staff would get, not our staff, but all four towns' staff could get priority in the hiring? And could we specify the staffing levels and the software in the IMA? And I worry about giving up that control and then having to be like Sherburne and having to join one later that's many, many miles away, rather than joining one with our neighboring towns that we already do mutual aid for. And I just want to say too that we are not an island. You know, we live in a region. We are all interconnected. Like, we are in a pickle right now where our water has that PFAS chemical, and we're kind of relying on Southborough to let us go through them to get to the MWRA. And I'm sure the residents of Southborough are writing to their select board members saying, why would you let Hopkinton tear up our streets so that Hopkinton can get the MWRA? But we're all connected, and, you know, I'm sure Southborough, you know, they'd probably be happy for us to have clean water, but they probably also don't like to get their streets torn up for our water needs. So, you know, we are a region, and we have to keep that in mind, and, you know, we never know when we might have needs from the other towns, just like they're going to have needs from us. Let's see. And I do believe too, somebody had mentioned at the meeting, I think, and I'm not quoting them exactly, that they were worried that the dispatchers from the other towns wouldn't prioritize calls for Hopkinton, that everybody would prioritize their own towns. And that was really not what we saw when we visited Norfolk, that they were prioritizing calls based on the severity of the call. If somebody was out of breath, or, you know, or versus somebody having a fender bender. The person out of breath, regardless of which town they're in, is going to get the priority. And I think we would all understand that and would want that. If somebody in Westborough is having trouble breathing, I want our policeman to go there first rather than to the fender bender where nobody is injured. And I think we all feel that way, that I hope, that we have compassion for people in other towns. Let's see. The cost savings is the same question I had. Muriel already reiterated that. It shows a cost savings in the feasibility study, but when we talked to Norfolk, it seemed like they had really felt that their initial staffing levels were too low, and it wasn't really a cost savings after all, that they really needed greater staffing than it was in the feasibility study. And I want to know a little bit more about the deadlines and the timeline. I know, I believe the deadline is in early March, and some of the other
towns would, their town meetings are earlier than ours. Ours is in May, but some other towns have a town meeting in March. So if this is going to go to all the town meeting towns, and I know it probably has to be a decision pretty soon. And then I'm also curious about the timeline. If we were to sign an IMA, how soon before everything changes and, they're not going to immediately take our 911 equipment away, I don't think, but I'd like to get clarification on that. And if we were to sign an IMA but didn't like how the negotiations went, are we losing money at that point and decide to drop out? Because I've heard different things about that would lose a lot of money if we signed an IMA and then got out of it, or really it's not a very large amount of money. Because I think there is a benefit to getting in a little bit on the ground floor and having control over that IMA that we might not have control over later. Let's see. Yeah, and I really was impressed with our best practices that we had at our dispatch center here in Hopkinton, and that, I hope if we would join a rec center, we could bring those best practices to others. But anyway, I have not fully made up my mind. I'm still waiting for a little bit more information, but that's where I am right now. So, Shidell hasn't spoken yet, so.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I hear my colleagues, and I think we are all on the same boat in many ways, which is that we have, given the time that we have, given a lot of attention to it, tried to gather the information and heard from all the key stakeholders and heard from our town residents too in various open forums. We visited the rec center, we spoke to the dispatchers, we spoke to or visited our dispatch center and collected as much as we can given the time and the knowledge or lack thereof that we have. So one thing obvious is that it is a critical matter and we are not taking it lightly at all, and we fully respect and understand that it involves our town's safety, our families' safety, and we also fully understand that it is a career for many who has served the town tremendously and has done so well. So we respect that, and we thank them for their service, and we want to do the right thing for everyone. And we also respect that, we want to be more efficient, we want to be more cutting edge, we want to save money where we see the opportunity for the betterment of the town, for the betterment of our residents' quality of service, and for the career of the dispatchers and all the service providers. Now, that said, the observation, one thing that is obvious is that it's too short a time for the task that we have at hand. And I feel that, I think we expressed, my colleagues expressed the same, we don't have enough convincing information to change the course at this time. That's my opinion. And I think it little bit, coming from, holistically as well, that when I first heard about the regional, it theoretically makes sense in a way that, of course, we want to shake hands with our peer towns and we want to be more efficient, we want to build consistency, and the key points we are hearing are also make sense theoretically, that there is economic benefit. Of course, when we consolidate, we should gain some efficiency through the consistencies. We should get, better service levels in some ways, and we should also have, be able to provide better careers for focused career path in a regional center where the dispatchers have more dedicated focus. But as we visited and as we spoke to the experts from the regional center and as we heard the consultants, I didn't find it very convincing on those fronts. And again, given the time, it may be we didn't get enough information. It may be we just visited one rec center. We should have had the opportunity to visit many more. Or it may be that, this concept is brewing and it's not fully matured yet. And the aspirational aspects that I just mentioned are potential benefits are yet to be tested. And, again, theoretically it all makes sense. So the economic one, I think the regional directors that we visited, they knocked it down themselves, saying that they don't see that as a driver or as a potential opportunity from their experience of consolidating and running the regional center for the last 5 years. In fact, they think that the cost may go higher. And for efficiency and service levels, I think we spoke about it, because of various other logistical constraints, there is no clear apples-to-apples comparable data to do that. Now, that said, again, I think ideal state at one point when all the things line up in an ideal world, it makes sense. But right now, given the information that we have, given the logic and understanding that we see, it's not very convincing. And if we look at our own capabilities today, so we are all very happy with the dispatch and all the dispatch activities that's happening, very happy with the service levels. We hear and saw the recognitions that our town is one of the safest towns in the nation, Northwood. And we also hear and see that our dispatchers are highly qualified, dedicated, and they're satisfied in their careers. So, and all these said, another point we also found out is the possible scenario of a dark station should the dispatchers are in a region consolidated form. There won't be anyone to greet or help immediately jumping into if someone runs into the police station. And obviously that can be mitigated, we can strategize around it. But again, obviously, top of the head, it sounds like more cost than cost savings, because then we'll have to have someone else man or provide that service, and that would be additional resource, be it the police force or be it another dedicated person. But going dark, in my view, is not an option, especially in a semi-rural area that we live. We definitely see the police station as a safe haven where we can run in and get some help quickly. And I know that, again, theoretically and technically, we should be able to get it through the phones calling there. But having someone there physically available and give a hand quickly and jump in as a human being, I think makes a world of difference. Now, a few other areas to also I want to bring up, which is that our town's uniqueness among the four, if we look at, is a little different as well, which is the other two towns, and I may mix up the names, but Westboro is busier in a sense. They have more hospital and commercial locations that may have higher volume. I forgot the number, but I think it is a higher volume. So they may have some more incentive in terms of cost savings going to a region. The other two towns are Southborough and Grafton. So they have currently only one dispatcher, so they would also have an immediate benefit by having backup dispatcher or a second hand to do that. But we are in a unique way. We are not too big to get the benefits like a big city or bigger town would, and we are not too small that we would benefit by getting an additional dispatcher. We already have that set up. So all these combined, I think if I look at those four, even after this preliminary evaluation of the benefits, validating or invalidating the benefits potential at the moment, I think we are kind of looking the least to benefit from these aspects. And again, given the time and the information, I also feel that it's not sufficient in many ways. We have so many questions. Now, that's another angle to think about. So what do we do now? I do want to take into account the human aspect of it, which is we have dedicated dispatchers who are going through this and a little bit of unsettling situation for a few months now. And we also have, we heard from the town residents, everyone or many worries what the decision is going to be and what it might look like and the uncertainty that comes with it. So we as leaders, I believe, have a responsibility to do something that gives more certainty, even though the situation is looking like we need more information, we need more time, and it may drag for a bit. So my recommendation would be, and I would like to hear from my colleagues as well, is that we can go two routes. One is, we all agree that we don't have or didn't have enough time and enough information, so we can give it much longer time and say, let's collect more information, do a more robust feasibility study that satisfied all the questions that we have, and through more forums gather and get more convincing picture of the things for a business case as well as a human case for the regionalization. And the human case would also include, as my colleagues have expressed, that how can we negotiate for the dispatchers for their continuity on career and continuity and some level of comfort for the benefits that they're getting. Then, given that time, maybe we put it on a town vote during the next town meeting, if that time is, we all agree, is sufficient enough to do that. And that will also help the town weigh in on this critical matter. And we heard a lot of voice from the town. Thanks to everyone for writing to us, for expressing to us, calling, meeting. All those are very, very important. And please continue to do that. So that's one path that I see. The other path I see is, and being honest and candid, I think it seems premature. And given all these, I'm leaning towards also considering that should we take a pause and say, let's give it more time, let the concept be more, get more maturity, and let us not be the, test case. I don't think there is a control or any other additional benefit by going in the first year versus going in the fifth year. That would be a question we could, get some information on, if there is any significant
the towns
benefit.
that go in first will write the intermunicipal agreement, and we will have to either sign on to what they have written or not. So that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so we will lose control of how the agreement is written.
It's a gift and a curse, though.
Right.
It's right, yeah. Yeah, maybe that's an open thing. We can also try to understand a little more, because even if we go first, we cannot dictate something that only favors Hopkinton, right?
No, it would be an agreement that all the 4 towns would have to agree to.
Correct, yeah. So I think that, theoretically there's a benefit, but I think that, and it's, one person's thought, that the delta of going year 1 and year 4 in terms of getting the control or the voice over others is not going to be that significant from, holistic perspective. And we wouldn't probably want to, if you take a high ground, want to do that too custom anyways. But that's one thought. And then the other thought is, would we be better off seeing how it goes, 3-4 years, let them mature, and we heard from the rec center as well that they still believe they haven't fully matured the process, fully matured their staff, fully matured their strategy. So why go now and go through that growing or maturing pain, rather wait 3 years, 2 years, I don't know the number, and see it mature, test it out, and then we can join. I'm looking from a town's perspective, and I fully understand from a state perspective, it would be a different argument. The state would want, bigger cost efficiency or consolidation for various other reasons. But from a town perspective, and we are, of course, representing the town and the town residents, and my best interest at the moment is the town. So from that angle, I think it might make sense to wait and see how it matures, prove out the points that we are hearing that are sounding like theoretical at the moment because of the lack of data and some of the feedback that we have. So the second recommendation I have, or second option I see, is that we pause it and take a decision to not to move forward right now and monitor and collect information. But at the same time, we don't want to go back to it every 6 months, every year. That would be unsettling for everyone and also distracting, and wouldn't be enough time for maturing the process. So go back to it in a time, 3 years, or our town resident numbers go to a certain number, whichever comes first. Some kind of rationale on that perspective. And I also hear and agree that it might be, and possibly with the growth everywhere, inevitable eventually, but I just not convinced that now is the time, nor do we have enough convincing information to go that route. So I took a lot of time, thank you for listening, but hopefully, we'll consider one of these two routes. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to say, we specifically said in our agenda that we're not going to vote on this tonight, and Irfan is not here, and I would like to get his feedback. So, and I think we have outstanding questions that the town staff might put together for us, too. So we're definitely not going to make a decision tonight.
I'm sorry.
Mary Jo had said she had another question, I believe, or a comment.
Well, and then Shaheen mentioned it, and it was the dock station where we were at the wreck. That was a dock police station, and I have to say I didn't care for it. And if we don't go with having a dock station, how are we going to staff it if not with the people that we have now? I don't know, it just doesn't seem right to me to have a dock police station. And that was different because upstairs was the wreck, so there were people, around, and, you ring the buzzer, and they came down and let us in, but there were no police or police officers in the building.
Sorry to interrupt for just a minute, but as far as I know, the town manager has stated that we would not do a dark station in Hopkinton, even though the one in Norfolk does do that. And I think all of us here do not support a dark station, is that correct?
Correct.
Well, that's correct, but we haven't talked about how we would make sure that's...
So I guess we need more on that, yeah.
I think that's what I'm looking for, is how are we going to do that if the dispatchers and if our 911 is all gone over to Westboro, what kind of a position is that going to be?
Yeah, so I think we need more detail on how we would not have a dark station, because none of us are supporting that. Right. Okay. Did you have more?
No, I'm fine now.
Okay, and Meryl, you had something more?
Just one last really quick thing. Somebody had a really great suggestion at the end of the information session, and that was to put an FAQ out to the local news agencies. Like get it to Hop News, get an insert in Hop News, or in Hopkins Independent and to Hop News.
Yeah, I agree.
With these big questions and some of the information that we know.
So you did put out some questions and answers, but I think more were based at the forum and tonight, so maybe we could do a more comprehensive question and answer.
Not everybody goes online, and most people do flip through the Independent, but not everybody watches our meetings and things. So if we can make a concerted effort to get the big pieces of information out, and I think quickly, that would be helpful.
Through the chair, I also wanted to understand when Chief Miller, and thanks for providing all the information. One thing you mentioned was the contention with when the call volume goes up. Is there any instance or any scenario that you have experienced or you and the police department combined that we can look at? That would be, I think, also helpful.
Through the chair, we do have the data that shows the frequency of second and third calls. And I think we've been collecting this for the last 12 months. I think we have that data for the last 12 months.
Okay, so I think that's a lot of our questions, comments, and concerns. So I think that we can move on to our next topic for tonight, and we'll look for more information, and Irfan will be here. I think he'll be here at our next meeting in case he has additional questions or comments. And I will advise him to watch this and the forum that was last week.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we're really running behind schedule now, so I think we're going to move on to the Sustainable Green Committee update. The Select Board will receive an update from the Sustainable Green Committee on the Climate Action Plan, including the greenhouse gas inventory, net zero resolution for annual town meeting, and a municipal aggregation plan. So, welcome. And do you have members on Zoom as well that we should liven up?
We should. Amy Groves and Paul Gallagher should be available.
Okay, so if we can liven up Amy Groves, who did you say, Paul Gallagher?
And Paul Gallagher. if he's
I
on.
don't see him. I see Linda Schuss. Is she on your committee?
She's a member of the committee, not of this work group, but...
Not the core group, okay, but she's listening, okay.
Yes.
And I don't see Paul Gallagher, but if he's on, he could raise his hand and he could get
Yeah, that's all
lined
right.
up. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for having us and for the true breadth of topics that you all cover. I'm Jeff Rowland, Chair of the Sustainable Green Committee. With me is Nicole Simpson. We have Amy Groves, Vice Chair of the committee as well on Zoom. So we're here tonight to talk about our climate action strategy. Are the slides being displayed?
Yeah, Ben, do you have the slides? He's going to put them up.
All right. All right, thank you. If we could move on to the next one, please. All right, so climate change, it's a global problem requiring local solutions, and we're trying to figure out how to do Hopkinton's part of this. So in the next few minutes, we'll dive into all of these topics in a little more detail, but at a high level, we've been working on a greenhouse gas inventory, figuring out where all of Hopkinton's emissions coming from. We'll be talking about a net zero resolution, setting a target date for when Hopkinton can achieve net zero. We're working on a climate action plan, all of the steps required to get to net zero, and a municipal aggregation plan, which is Hopkinton negotiating a rate for the electrical supply on behalf of residents is kind of a key component towards the carbon math, towards net zero as well. Next slide, please. So this is a very high-level view of the data we have on our greenhouse gas inventory. This is based on Massachusetts databases. From 2017, the data tends to lag multiple years. I think the last year for which we have full data is 2019, but over time I'm sure this will get better. When we give these presentations, generally we like to point out the big three. Passenger vehicles, residential buildings, and commercial and industrial are roughly 30% each of Hopkinton's emissions. Of extra note here is municipal operations are a little under 3% of Hopkinton's total emissions. We do have some known gaps in the data, such as, if you were to look through this, you'd notice we don't have anything here on waste or recycling. We've asked the DPW to investigate that, and they've passed on that request to Harvey's. All of this goes into state databases, so there's some gap in the reporting there. Another thing is we can't account for carbon sequestration. Hopkinton has a lot of open space, trees and soil and whatnot. We know that these sequester carbon, but it's hard to get a measure of that. We've found some sources we're trying to assess. Over time, those methods should improve a little bit as well. Next slide, please. So this year, we'd like to put forward a net zero resolution for annual town meeting. At a high level, it's in the packet for tonight, but it lays out the case for at the UN, at the federal, at the state, and Hopkinton levels, what the targets are, and some of the data behind why. You'll see that at the state, federal, and international levels, they tend to align around a 50% reduction by 2030, a 75% reduction in emissions by 2040, and net zero by 2050. What we would like to recommend is a little bit more aggressive. Same target for 50% reduction by 2030. No matter what you do, that's going to be hard. A little more aggressive for 75% reduction by 2037 and net zero by 2045. We think that as a growing and flourishing community, that Hopkinton has the responsibility but also the capabilities to be a little more aggressive. We laid out in the 2017 master plan that Hopkinton should be a climate leader, and this would take that step. And as far as capabilities, we have some certain advantages in Hopkinton. Some of those being relatively less large industry compared to Westboro, for example, like we talked about. We've talked to Westboro's Sustainability Committee, and their commercial emissions tend to be about 5 times what ours are. So it's a very different challenge for them. We have a lot more green space for carbon sequestration and things like that. And we also have relatively newer construction, which is up to newer building standards. It'll require less work to modify. to reduce emissions on those. But we also know that big projects tend to run over. And aiming for a slightly earlier target does give us a little buffer as well towards the overall 2050 goals set for everybody else. Next slide, please. So additionally, in the resolution, we would like to direct that appropriate boards, committees, and departments report their net zero plans to the select board by the end of calendar year 2024. And the Sustainable Green Committee or appropriate town staff would provide annual reporting towards the emissions, similar to the donut we had at the beginning, but with more details. We've also met with a number of other committees over the past couple of months, I think around 8 so far. And some of the feedback we heard was it's hard for them to prioritize sustainability over other goals, such as budget. For example, the school committee, they have a very large budget, but a lot of things to do within that. So a resolution such as this, or Norman had suggested potentially a joint policy decision between select board and school committee, could help basically provide some cover for such groups to justify sustainability choices that may be, higher budget or require more work. And as for the town meeting logistics, we got feedback from the town legal counsel today. Thank you, Elaine, for sending that over. The general feedback was that as a non-binding proposal, it doesn't require too much support from town committees to put it on the warrant. There were some, minor clarifications we can make to the draft, just to clear up some nuances. And the town council also suggested we make potentially have a bylaw review that we suggest in there, that the town review bylaws to see if there are any changes that we could make towards these goals.
For this year or for next year, the bylaw changes?
Not for this year, but to propose putting in the resolution that the town do that
for
review.
the following year, okay.
Yes.
Got it.
We're not going to be that aggressive.
And just, I have a question on this
Yes.
slide. So, under which board proposes it? You are an established town committee, so you guys could propose it, right? And then other town boards, committees could recommend, could vote to recommend or not recommend approval, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
That was our understanding as well, but we weren't sure since this was, a primary goal for the select board, if you would like to be primary and we'd be, secondary
primary
sponsors.
versus add-on, yeah. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
That's all I had.
Oh, that was it, okay,
resolution. Yeah.
great.
We do have more slides just on that specific topic. That was.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so go ahead. Do you want to go through this, you have more slides to go through, or?
We do, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, sure. Next slide, please. So, a climate action plan. We've been working on a draft of this with the town manager's office. We will have a consultant be joining us, hopefully late winter, spring time, we've heard, from MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, to help us finalize it, run some community forums, to gather feedback. But generally, the broad areas that we're looking at approaching through the plan are green energy such as solar or the municipal aggregation plan, which we'll talk about next. Buildings would be energy efficiency, mass save program, electrification from say natural gas to heat pumps such as the ones above your heads right now. Any zoning or building code issues surrounding that. Transportation issues such as EVs and charging stations, walking and biking. Environmental issues, land, water topics, waste, waste and recycling, and then industrial topics, which is the grayest area for us at the moment. We need to dig into that further. And just last night at the full Sustainable Green Committee meeting, we voted to formalize work groups on the first 5 of these 6 topics, long-running work groups that can, really zero in and dig in on the expertise needed to approach these further. Next slide, please. So, municipal aggregation plan. It's the municipality negotiating the electrical supply rate on behalf of the town. So, if you were to take a look at your electrical bill, there are 2 primary rates on it. There's the supply rate and there's the delivery rate. Delivery is like the wires and poles. That's always going to go to Eversource. The supply rate is technically an open market. Eversource, is most of our providers there. But you may have gotten things in the mail at home, switch to, 100% green energy, for example. This is essentially Hopkinton can do that on behalf of residents. It allows competitive pricing, predictable costs over, typically towns do about a 3-year contract on these. You can get greener sources of electricity. By default, the Massachusetts minimum is, I think, about 22% of local green energy, and that only goes up by about 2% per year. Through an aggregation plan, the town can choose a greener mix there. There can be multiple tier options. Most towns choose 2 or 3 tiers. There's generally a basic tier, which is like the lowest rate that you would recommend for residents lower or fixed income. And then some towns choose to have a higher tier, which is, for example, 100% green energy, and then a default option, which, depending on the town, they choose, what they feel is best for them, price-wise, versus, a green balance. What's really interesting is the true flexibility of these plans. People can opt in, opt out as they see fit. It is an opt in automatically, and residents need to opt out if they don't want to be part of aggregation, if the town moves forward with a contract. Next slide, please. So for more details on these, you can mitigate against rising prices. I don't know about you, but I saw my recent Eversource bill today, and it was pretty steep. And that doesn't account for the latest rate changes, or practically doesn't account it. That just went into effect for January. From July to December of last year was about 66% higher supply rate than the year previous. And just a week ago, that supply rate jumped another 43%. It's going to be a very expensive winter for people. The aggregation plans can lower our emissions, from a carbon math perspective towards our net zero goal. So as an example, if you were to choose a plan that's 10% greener by default for the town, say 30 to 32% green power, that would have double the impact of transitioning all of the municipal operations to net zero, which was, again, just under 3%. I understand the math doesn't quite make sense, because carbon math can be weird because you account for different fuel supplies and whatnot. But I just wanted to highlight the big impact you can have by making a choice there. And want to mention that approximately 40% of towns in Massachusetts have aggregation plans. It's extremely common. Some towns, they will have one for a while, and then they'll choose not to based on the rates available at the time, and then they'll opt into one again in the future. And analysis we completed before these recent rate spikes showed that over the prior few years, most towns that have aggregation plans are paying below market rates. I don't know what market rates would come to these days, but it's very good to know. Next slide, please. So as far as the process for aggregation, town meeting authorization is required, but that was done nearly 10 years ago at town meeting. The select board at the time chose not to proceed with it. The feedback that we heard was that they did not like that it was that town residents had to opt out and that they were opted in automatically, and that they didn't like that you couldn't guarantee that residents would be paying below market rates. But I feel that's mitigated by the flexibility of the plans, and that residents can opt out or opt back in at any time that they choose. So any next steps, if we choose to proceed here, would that the select board would direct the DPW or town manager's office to investigate contracting and see what options are available at the time. And then once that is complete, it goes to the state DPU for approval. We do know there have been some well-publicized delays here. I've heard that's getting better. But that is a slight hiccup that could happen there. Any questions on aggregation before we move on?
This is all news to me. I didn't remember that, I go to town meeting every year, but I didn't remember this.
It's been a while.
And that it wasn't, that it never was implemented, so, yeah, I really like this idea, but I don't want to really vote on it tonight since Irfan is not here, and he might have some thoughts as well, but, so we could specify like that 10% tier that everyone would get by default, but they could opt out, or they could specify a higher tier of green
Right.
energy, right? Okay.
Yeah, so
wow.
we could take a look at like what options are available, pricing-wise, to strike that balance between greenness and price that residents would pay.
Because I know I've heard the same for saving for retirement. If you just make everybody opt into 10% savings, most people will just stay at that level, but people who really can't afford it won't, and then people usually are happy to know that they've saved for retirement. Yeah, okay, does anyone else have questions?
Through the chair. So I didn't know about this, so it's fascinating. Thank you for bringing that up, and all the good work that you're doing on this, and your committee is doing on this. Appreciate that. I had two questions immediate. One is we all need to process it, of course, and understand more what it means, what the detailed kind of aggregation plan or contract might look like. But anything that can save my electric bill sounds enticing, and also our bigger cause, of course, saving the climate and helping our environment to moving towards net zero is definitely appealing. Do you know, and I'm just asking that because I want to hear if there is any counter argument to this. Do you know if there was any particular reason for not opting for it in the earlier days?
I can answer that.
Yeah, please.
It simply boils down to back in 2013, this was a new concept. And at that point, the contracts that were being put in place did not have the flexibility that you find in the contracts that have been signed recently. So at that point, the select board did not feel comfortable moving forward in a contract that would have locked town residents in. The fear being, should prices go down, we're still going to be locked to that higher price.
Always that fear.
Yeah.
But now it looks like a flexible opt-in, opt-out. If
We believe
or
based on what we are seeing in other communities, that may be achievable.
Okay.
Again, the energy sector is constantly changing. We know in the last 2 years, because of the war in Ukraine, things have changed. So I have not looked at any contracts that were signed in the last 6 months.
Great. No, 9 years makes a big difference, of course.
Yeah. And if we were to direct the DPW to put out a call for vendors, we could, I guess, evaluate them and decide that they were not good enough, right?
Yeah, in fact, that process goes through the town manager's office, and in fact will be done not by John, but by Dave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through the chair, one last just comment on that is, if we are to see, the accounting of this, where could we get that? Would that be someone we assign and say, assess this, what's out in the market, and what does it look like?
I think this will be a two-step process. The first step is to put together a bid package and ask for proposals to come in. So before proposals come in, there is no accounting information to review. And then bidders respond and they give us proposals. Here's what we can enter into with the town. At that point, yes, the information to make a good decision for the community will be available.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah.
On aggregation?
So I think that this slide tells me that each individual town gets approved through the state DPU, is that?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, A+ for putting this together. This is really, you have all been doing a tremendous amount of work, and we really appreciate it. The only other thought I have is that we actually got a question on this today, or in the last couple of days. Could we send this presentation to that constituent who asked the question?
Oh, I think Mary Arnott.
Oh, yes, we will. We will. In summary, we received an email in favor of the aggregation plan.
Yes.
Not knowing that it was coming to the select board.
Yes, but that person will be very interested. I mean, I would have said something right away if I had sort of put the two dots together, but we ought to send the presentation to her.
We will.
Anyway, thank you. I don't have any other questions about the aggregation plan.
Okay. And you have a few more slides?
I think we have one more slide formally, yes. Yeah, we just wanted to point out that, climate change affects everybody, but not everybody equally. And so that's something that we want to be cognizant of. And one idea we've bounced around with Norman is the idea of a green fund. Norman's, he calls it his pet project, right? Is there a way for the town to generate revenue, for example, to help people with the transition, say, to solar, or from, gas or oil to heat pumps? These changes can be very expensive and require not simply, swapping out of equipment. You may need to even upgrade your electrical systems, for example. One brainstormed idea we had was, what if we put solar canopies over, say, EMC Park, for example, the parking lot, not the fields, like we're doing at the schools, to generate, such revenue. So, the ideas we're looking at.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. So do we have any overall questions for them or comments? Yep.
I'm a liaison to these people, and I have enjoyed their meetings very much. And one suggestion that came up, and I really think that we have to look at it for the future. I'm not saying that there's anything we can do about it right now, but that is to get together with planning and other departments to see how we can write in energy efficient, write in things like solar and things for the future, so that we don't have to wait till a building is built and then put solar on the roof, that it can be part of the process.
The permitting.
Permitting process, and part of the plans and all of that sort of thing. Right now, I think it's probably cost prohibitive, but it is something that I think that we've got to turn our minds to in the future. And I also want to say we are getting the solar in the parking lot at the middle school very soon.
Yes, awesome.
So you'll be parking under solar panels, which is very efficient. So
yeah, we love it.
Congratulations, you guys do a great job.
Thank you. I did want to point out that we have been meeting with the Zoning Advisory Committee and the Planning Board, with all our free time. And we're having discussions with them about, EV charging stations requirements. They're thinking about solar requirements as well. We've recently learned about, at the state level, there have been building code, the Stretch Energy Code has been updated and it went into effect a week ago. So Hopkinton, because we opted into the Stretch Energy Code in 2010, we got the new version of it automatically, but there's an even stretchier version of it that's available that we need to evaluate, which basically pushes the envelope. It was designed specifically to achieve Massachusetts' 2050 net zero goals. But we need some time to take a look at it. John Gelsich, recommended we get the building inspector's review first. And we're running it by Zach and Planning Board as we can. Maybe it requires town meeting approval, so we're not going to put it through in this month, but potentially at the special town meeting that's likely going to happen in the fall. We might be having that discussion.
This is a great opportunity to see multiple boards working together for a new cause. And I appreciate it very much.
Sustainability. Sustainability and net zero, really, it spans across everything. So we've had conversations with the school committee and planning board and Zach and trails, and it really touches so many different things that, and there's a list of groups that we want to continue to talk to. So hoping to touch on all those different areas. So folks are aware of the opportunities available to be part of this transition.
There's new meaning to the word community.
I just wanted to say one more thing. So also, A+ for transparency as well, and opportunities for input. So I don't know if you said it, but you have put the climate action plan up to view as you write it, which is amazing.
It hasn't been touched in a while, to be honest with you. It hasn't been touched in a little while, to be honest.
I'm just saying, and it's brave, but I really appreciate it, right? So this is exercising a next level kind of trust and transparency and invitation to the public to get involved. And it makes sense in an issue that's so current and so important to us all. Also, the net zero resolution is up to read, and then there's a contact information, greenchair@hopkintonmass.gov, if people want to get in touch. And they, the title of the slide is "We welcome your input." So I appreciate that, and I hope people are making contributions to the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, just a few comments and a couple of questions maybe for future. So first of all, wonderful work. Thanks to your committee, all the members, a lot of thought leadership, I see that. So fascinating and excited to see, and I really feel like that, acting locally, we can actually make a difference in the global problem. So very encouraging. And I just want to share also, as we discussed, when we are looking at various new construction, planning and design in the ESBC2, it also comes out how we can be net zero. That's one of our goals. And we were discussing with the school a few weeks back, and I was very happy to hear that I think middle school is, without the emissions, just on the power side with the new additional solar panels, will be almost self-sufficient, almost net zero from that aspect. So that is definitely an evidence that it's doable if we make the right decisions and take the right actions. So very encouraging, and please keep up the good work. So with that, I think what I would like to understand a little more in the future, and I'm sure you have it, and maybe it's not part of this conversation today, is if we have accounting of the emission and net zero, kind of the balance sheet for our town, that would really give us a good picture where we stand and how achievable or big the challenge is ahead, and then we can keep monitoring it as you have suggested. That would be great. And second is, once we have that accounting of the carbons or carbon emissions and net zero balance sheet, how can we estimate what is the cost for various type of initiatives, that is embedded within our existing initiatives? That is ideal, then we don't have to have additional costs. But if we are to look at other options, what might it look like? We always want to solve something, but it also makes it real when we have a dollar value or a cost value attached to it, so we can make it or help make it real when we see the opportunities. And the third question thought for future is, with all the great climate bills that we have and the funding that we have at federal levels, how can we tap into that, and what are the advantages or various goodies we can bring for our town from that? I think that will also help expedite this mission. But thank you again, and wonderful presentation, great information, very encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you. On your first 2 points, we hope to, I think, formalize those as part of the climate action plan through the springtime. Mm-hmm. And then we try to stay on top of the money available, but there's so many different sources. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
great. Yeah.
The Inflation Reduction Act nationally, and then the bill passed in Massachusetts over the summer, both are really game changers in this with the amount of money available. And just to be clear, when we're talking about this net zero resolution in our climate action plan, we're not just talking about municipal operations. That's the area we have the most control over here, but it's about businesses and residents as well. It's about the entire community, and that's where that funding can, the tax rebates and sometimes the upfront rebates that are available on purchases really around electrification, so vehicles to electric vehicles, to heat pumps in homes, for installing solar, induction cooking, really moving off of fossil fuels in all of these different areas of our lives. It's going to take everyone, so that includes the residents, and so a piece of what we do as a Sustainable Green Committee is communication, and we just want people to be aware of the money available, where sometimes these daunting upfront costs, once you have that rebate, it's not as it's not that different from the fossil fuel options, and then the long-term operational costs can often be lower. So there are a lot of expenses along with making this transition, but in many cases in the long run, it really pays off, especially when you consider things like solar.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much, and I think this is really great work. I was going to say, we have 2 more meetings in January, so maybe at one of those we could decide whether we might submit the net zero resolution to town meeting versus your committee, and our funds should be here. And then, and maybe we could also determine if we should go out to bid for or request quotes for the municipal aggregation plan too. So, you had something to say, or did you?
Yeah, more or less along the same lines. First off, I want to commend the efforts by the Hopkinton Sustainable Green Committee. We have many volunteers who do exceptional work for the community. I think what stands out in terms of this group is twofold. Number one, the work that they just spoke about is not work that they've been doing for 10 years. This is work that just comes once before them. Unlike other town bodies, for example, Zoning Board of Appeals, Planning Board, they deal with work regularly. And to see the enthusiasm, the curiosity, and the desire to learn amongst all of them has been very inspiring. I think the second piece I want to share with the community as well as with the board is, I think what you're also hearing is that they have 3 significant initiatives: the Climate Action Plan, the Aggregation Plan, and the Net Zero Resolution. These are substantial projects. And so anybody who is ready to help, please step forward and help this wonderful group. Offline schedule, we will share with you some of the balance sheet information, data that they've collected, especially on public buildings. They are making a gallant effort to even collect that information on private buildings, which is almost impossible. But this group is not, they are undeterred by that. They've kept plowing forward. So, good work.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much. We're very behind in our agenda, so I think we're going to have to move on to the next.
Thank you. This was really great work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're an hour behind it. Okay. So,
Not your fault, Ian.
all right, Lake Maspinock Weed Management Advisory Committee, thank you for your patience.
Through the chair, good evening.
No, it's easy for you.
And are you expecting anyone on Zoom that we should liven up, or everyone's in person?
I don't think so, through the chair, unless there are folks from the public who are looking to make a comment. Public comment period.
Okay.
Through the chair, good evening, thank you very much for your time. I'm joined this evening by, Joe Baldiga, who's the chairman of the Lake Maspinock Weed Management Advisory Committee, and to my immediate right by David Mitchell, who's our certified limnologist. And I apologize for my cough. We're here to update you tonight on where we are with the state of the lake in our weed management. Your packets included the Conservation Commission's order of conditions for the toolbox of weed management options, and that's from May 13th of 2022. And it also included the Lake Maspinock Aquatic Vegetation Control and Management Plan of 2021. In the toolbox of options that we went to the Conservation Commission included lake drawdown, application of herbicides, benthic barriers, hand harvesting, and mechanical harvesting. And we are currently in the midst of a lake drawdown to 8 feet, but we are only able to reach about 7 feet due to the extensive rainfall that we've had. Excuse me. And in order for the drawdown to be effective on weed management, it really depends on 2 things. One is that we're able to reach the 8-foot drawdown level, and extreme cold weather in order to be able to freeze out and kill the weed seeds. It's been a relatively mild winter, thankfully, from the Director of Public Works and Snow Removal side. But unfortunately, that's not helping our efforts to kill the weeds. So the committee recommended to the Director of Public Works to use herbicides in 2023. And I will now turn it over to Mr. Baldiga to explain how we got to that recommendation.
Thank you. Joe Baldiga. We've lived on a lake for 6 years. We've been in Hopkinton for about 20. I've been doing spring and fall lake surveys where we go out in the boat and we check out the status of the weeds for about 5 years. And somehow I've been chair of this citizen input group for 2 years. But the citizen input group itself has been in existence for almost 10 years. I think back in 2015, there was a recognition that the weeds of Lake Maspinock were a problem. There was a recognition that we didn't want the lake to get like Lake Whitehall is, or like Ice House Pond is now, where the weeds are, problematic, both for the lake health and also for recreational use of the lake. And a lot of people in this room behind me were a part of that earlier committee. Again, I've only been on the lake for 6 years and on the committee itself for 4 or 5. About 5 years ago, in the initial plan, there was a recommendation, after a lot of research and work done by, again, most of these folks in the room, that the drawdown in itself was not going to be sufficient. There was a lot of investigatory work as to other options, which are in the plan and in the toolbox. But there was a recognition at the end of the day, and after checking with a lot of other towns and having our own scientists at hand, that particularly in the North Basin, which is really from Sandy Beach towards West Main Street, right? It's shallow water, it's only 4 or 5, 6 feet deep, a lot of sunlight, and the weeds are horrible. So not in May, but by July, August, the weeds make that part of the lake almost unusable. You can't go out there with a boat, it's dangerous swimming, you get caught in the weeds. And there was recognition that we needed some herbicide, and that was proposed, and again, I wasn't part of this, but I understand it got shot down. So since then, we've come up with a new plan. I've been involved again with the lake surveys for the last 5 years, and the weeds have gotten progressively worse, particularly again in the North Basin, where the water is deep, which is south of Sandy Beach. It's not an issue, right? We check all those areas. We have 10 or 12 stations that we check twice a year, and the deeper water, it's not a problem. But the North Basin is getting just horrible, and every year it's worse. And every year we have the same discussion. Every year in May we go out and do the survey. There's no weeds, right? Because the weeds die in the winter. The desiccation, if that's the right word, right? Whatever.
Yes.
And then by July or August, again, it's horrible. And we hope every year that the drawdown is going to work. We just heard about climate change. That's affecting the success of the drawdowns. This year is a perfect example. Pretty soon, we have to close the dam up, and we have to start letting the water again. I think that's the end of January, right?
January 15th.
So we've already passed the period this year for the drawdown to be effective. We haven't gotten the hard freeze. We haven't been getting the hard freezes for the last, since I've been on the lake, 4 or 5 years, and every year, the weeds are worse. Particularly now, we're seeing by August or so, you can see the weeds up on the surface in some of the coves on North Basin. I always call it the bird sanctuary area, which is off Downey. It used to be beautiful. You could kayak in there. Those coves are getting plugged up. I mean, the lake, particularly in North Basin, is starting to close in. And, there's a concern by people who live on the lake and are pulling out during the summer days bushels of weeds. I mean, you can't keep up with the magnitudes of the weeds that are just getting chopped up, floating up to your property. You're having to pull them out. Next day, they're all there again. It's horrible. So we have spent many hours, many meetings, public meetings, looking at solutions. We've talked about mechanical harvesting. There's a lot of stones, you can't do it that way. Mr. Mitchell has described that as mowing the lawn, because all you're doing is, taking the top off the weeds. It's not killing the weeds. So we are back again recommending herbicide. We think the lake is, again, getting worse. The difficulty has always been the timing, because to do herbicide when it matters, you have to do it when the weeds start growing, which is really late May or so. But in late May, the weeds don't appear to be a problem, because again, it's not until the end of July, August, right, into the late summer that you see the weeds are a problem. But we can't wait that long, because again, every year by that time they're worse. So what we're trying to do is get this board support, we really need Concom support, so that we can come up with a plan so that we can, if the drawdown fails and the weeds, we know are going to be bad again, that we've lined up, taken the measures that we need to take so that we can line up a contractor, make sure we have it approved by Concom, and we can get somebody out there applying limited herbicide, again, just in North Basin, right? It's not blanketing the lake. It's not just broadcast treatment everywhere. It's very specific areas where we know the problems are worse. So anyway, I'll shut up. That's what we're here for. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to clarify. You're not looking for a vote from us tonight, is that right? Or
I'll point to the DPW. What are we looking for tonight?
Through the chair, I don't think that this requires necessarily a vote of the select board.
Okay.
More so your opinions, your feedback on the concept of applying herbicides in the lake.
Okay, and you have Concom approval and order of conditions?
We have an order of conditions for the application of herbicides. There are a number of items that they would want to see from us before we're able to apply the herbicides, but they did approve herbicide application as part of the toolkit of those 5 different methods.
But recognizing it was going to be a 2-step process, right? It's part of the toolbox now, but then we'd have to come back to them and show them that the conditions are met such that that tool is what we're recommending and they should approve.
So if you determine after this winter that there was not enough of a hard freeze, then you would go to Concom and say, can you do the herbicides, right? So they would really be the final deciders. Okay. Okay, so you're not looking for a vote particularly from us, just some general opinion and
just strong
questions, comments, or concerns. Okay. All right, would like to go first?
I'll go.
Okay.
I've been in town about 45 years or more, and it seems like weeds in Lake Maspinock comes up every year and has been a problem. And a number of years ago, they wanted to put chemicals in the water, and there was a big debate on it, and they had decided not to. But since then, I understand that a lot of research has gone into the kinds of herbicides that you can use, and the kind that is being recommended for this portion of the lake is one of the newer, better herbicides out there. And I would definitely be in favor of its use. I had been an assessor in a community that lost its lake to weeds, and it made a lot of changes in the town. And I wouldn't want to see that happen here at all. We use that lake very much for recreation, and I would like to see it also kept as clean as possible. I want the people on the lake to be responsible for the weeds in their area. My son lives up on Newfound Lake in New Hampshire, which is supposedly the cleanest in New England, but they actually have to, their boats actually have to go through a cleaning process before they're even allowed on the lake. And we need to do something, the people that live in the lake have to police themselves that way and make sure any boats or anything that gets into that water is clean and isn't bringing millipore or something else with it. So that's all I want to say. I am in favor of herbicides, the ones that we're using now, not the ones they brought up years ago. And I would like to see the lake kept as weed-free and clean as possible.
So I put a big note on my papers, big bold letters, right, so I wouldn't forget, and of course I forgot, which was education. Because in addition to drawdowns, what we've really been trying to focus on is education of folks who live on the lake, who visit the lake, right? We don't have the capacity to have like some bigger lakes, and probably Newfound Lake, right, where they have a washing station for the boat. We don't have that capacity, but we've spent a lot of time, and again, some of the people in this room have spent a lot of time designing educational pamphlets that we're making an emphasis, give out to people. You know, it's what not to put on your lawns, right? But also what not to blow in the lake. I had, I'm not going to, mention any names, but I had a neighbor on the lake who was blowing all the goose poop and the grass clippings and the leaves right into the lake. That's, the worst thing possible, right, for the lake health. So a big part of what folks are emphasizing, and some of the folks here from the Lake Association, is the education component. So we're not just here saying, throw the weeds in, let people do whatever, throw the herbicides in, do whatever they want. We're trying to really get folks educated too for the lake health. So, thank you.
You all set?
Through the chair, thanks for bringing this up. Obviously the problem is real and we need a solution. So I'm along the same lines that we want our lakes clean, usable, and we enjoy and love the lakes in this town. It's a huge, character of the town that I'm very proud of. And that said, we want to also be environment friendly. We want to make sure we don't use anything that could be long-term detrimental for our environment and for our use. So optimally, I'm supportive of solving it, of course.
Okay, Muriel?
I know it's a problem out there, and has been a problem, and I truly sympathize, and I'm so appreciative of scanning through this report as I'm sitting here. I'm so appreciative of the work that's gone on over the years. I'm going to be honest with you, though, it is very hard for me to be enthusiastic about using herbicides, just knowing how hard it is to know over time that they're safe over time, and I'm also really want to enthusiastically support the right solution for the lake and for the folks that live out there. So this probably isn't the ringing endorsement you were hoping for. I can't help but say it concerns me to use herbicides. However, I do trust that a lot of work and consideration and thought and research is going into this. So, I don't think I'm going to stand in anybody's way. I just want you to know that it's hard for me to be enthusiastic about herbicides.
And the folks on the citizen input group, right, we have that discussion all the time. None of us are pro-herbicide, right?
Yeah.
I consider myself an environmentalist. I'm not excited at the thought of putting herbicide in there.
I've seen with my own eyes how hard, and I don't live there, but, I have good friends that live out there. I've seen it myself. I know it's challenging. I know that there's a balance in consideration for lake health and so forth, too. But anyway, that's where I am.
Yeah, I think I will say I'm in a similar boat to Muriel. I'm very reluctant to approve the use of herbicides, but I do understand this is in your toolkit as kind of a last resort. And I really appreciate the comments about the education, because I remember there was an Eagle Scout project, probably on the other lake, Lake Whitehall, a few years ago, about notifying the residents not to use certain chemicals on your lawn or the other products that are going to make the weed problem worse. So I think that is a really key component. If we're causing the weeds by doing something wrong in our yards, we need to stop doing that. But I have confidence in our Conservation Commission, and if they're going to review this and determine that it's time to use this as a last resort, then I think I'm comfortable with that. But I'm not enthusiastic because, we already have this PFAS situation, and I don't want to, herbicides can have unintended consequences too. But I think if Conservation Commission approves it, then I think I understand that it's necessary. Is that?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
By the way, unbelievably excellent report.
Yes.
In fact, Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, really thorough and well done, and I appreciate it.
Through the chair, it's the work of Mr. Mitchell, but also the citizen input group. There have been many different members over the past 8 years, perhaps?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work that's gone into it to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the lake.
And from my viewpoint, from doing this at other lakes as well, a very dedicated bunch, met time and time again for a volunteer group, and the fidelity to a volunteer group of people being on 5 or 6 years with busy schedules and such is really impressive, and they're a good bunch, so.
Thank you all. Really appreciate that.
Did you want to add something briefly?
Yes.
Oh, we have to come to the desk.
So my name is Jamie Gonsalves. I'm the president of the Lake Maspinock Preservation Association, and many of the members and board members are here in support of the Citizens Input Group. It's been going on for 8 years. We've had that group. I was on it for 5. I was part of the team that developed that initial plan, and like you said, it's a lot of effort and time went into it, and we want to get this over the finish line. And a couple things I want to kind of make a point of. Nobody's pro-herbicides. This is the last resort. There's no other options that really make fiscal sense unless you want to dredge the lake. And I don't think anybody has that kind of cash to lay out. It's a multi-million-dollar project. I don't think that's going to happen. But, I mean, we're at this point. Something needs to be done. And I just want to make sure that you're aware that there's a lot of people who are in support of these people and all the work that they've put forth.
Thank you, that's helpful. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Michael Riley, West Main Street. In addition to what he's saying is, having been part of the Lake Association for many years, even when we first bought the dam,
It goes back to you and I a few years ago there, Michael.
I was on the dam committee, so, but I can say that, again, no one wants herbicides, but I'm also a big believer in science, and it's important that we kind of pay attention to science. If anything, what we've lived through for the last couple of years is get rid of your initial thoughts, and actually, what does the science say? And the science will tell you, in their reports, that the science is, there's been lakes that have been using this stuff for 40 years, or different types of things, and there's no increase of cancer, there's no decrease of wildlife or fisheries that have changed. It is significant that we look at this and say, okay, none of us want to choose chemicals. Some people do their lawn, some people don't. But just to kind of ignore the science because something initially in our guts, and unfortunately, I think conservation, in the last time we just went to comment, somebody says, well, I don't like chemicals. It's like, well, we live on chemicals. Our whole life is chemicals. So our goal is to educate people on conservation. Our goal is to help educate you guys. Our goal is to educate other people in the community. I guess that the people who are affected the most are the people who live on the lake. And if you take a poll of people on the lake, it's significantly greater for people that support it as opposed to people who control this outcome who never put their toe in the lake. So think about that as your landowners, as you look at your yard or you look at your things. If people who don't even use it are deciding the fate of something as opposed to the people who live there, I think there's something fundamentally wrong with that. And so I'm hoping that through education we can get people to look at the science of these chemicals used in these lakes for decades without any long-term harm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we're on to the town manager report. Let's see, so Main Street Quarter Project. There was a report from Michelle. Unless anyone had questions on that, should we move to the next item, the PFAS, or?
Any questions on the PFAS? I think the headline there is, we went to town meeting, sought $600,000 for the project. Based on information we have now, the project is 1.2 million.
Oh.
Yeah.
So there was so much on our agenda, I'm afraid I missed that. Okay, so.
What was the rationale for the change or reason for the?
Construction costs, no doubt.
Yes.
Twice as much, right?
Yeah, construction costs as well as going into the process, we had anticipated doing a design-build option, but because of the procurement process, we took a different option, which is why now it's 1.2 million.
So we cannot go forward at all without another town meeting vote? Is that because of the...
We will require an additional town meeting vote.
So we will not really be able to install it this spring like we had hoped? So.
No, the filtration system, I believe, will be able to do so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So what...
It's the additional components of the system. Yeah. Remember...
So we can start now?
Yes.
But we need another town meeting vote for the rest? Okay. And this is our medium-term solution, correct?
That is correct, which then...
I know, let's do the next one.
Which then brings us to the next item on the town manager's report.
Yes.
The message here being, on December 15th, we met with our counterparts from Southborough. And I think what we heard from Southborough is that Southborough would really like to support Hopkinton move this project forward, recognizing that, for one, Southborough really does not need to be doing this work. That's the conclusion that they've reached.
They even have the added capacity for the MBTA communities, right? If they have to add 750 units, they already have that capacity.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And
they're not really looking to upgrade their water system right now.
Exactly, and so they are simply helping a neighboring community in need. And also they realize that moving this project forward is a very big decision for Southborough, and so they would really like to take it to their town meeting, and their town meeting is on March 25th, I believe.
It's in March, I don't remember the date, yeah.
Yes. They also realize that the project will have significant impacts on their roadways and neighborhoods.
And we know from our own experience when the residents, with our own roadway construction, the complaints they're going to get on that, yeah.
Exactly. And against that background, they identified at least 2, 4, 5 principles that will be the framework for our ongoing discussions. Number one, that Hopkinton will have to bear all the direct costs. Number two, that Hopkinton will have to account for and compensate Southborough for the impacts. And then number three, that all the construction costs will have to be covered by Hopkinton. And they also realize that long-term, there will be operation and maintenance costs. They would like, as part of this agreement, if we move forward, that Hopkinton reimburse Southborough for those costs. And then finally, they realize too that there may be other unrelated improvements that they would like accounted for, and they've come up with a value of those projects at $1 million. So those are the 5 principles that they've identified for the negotiations to go forward. They would like to support Hopkinton, realizing that really, if Hopkinton was not asking for this, Southborough would not be bearing the impacts and the costs that are identified as part of this project.
And it may not even pass Southborough town meeting, we don't know,
To the Chair, Madam Chair, you have attended some of these meetings, I assume? I think it's gracious of Southborough to agree to open and collaborate. Certainly appreciate that. And one thing during the negotiation, and you know this, of course, is we want to also identify specific criteria for some of these terms that are principles that are out there. For example, the impact or the projects that are related. How do we define those? I think is also important to make sure we are focused on the right level of impact, because it can be more broad, right? So just I would look for some specificity as the negotiation continues.
Good point. In fact, they did give us a sense as to what could fall under each of those 5 categories, so we are on notice. Yeah.
There was a slideshow, but I don't, was it in the packet, or maybe you emailed it to us separately?
Yeah,
I'm not seeing the
emailed
link.
it to the board separately.
Slideshow put together by Southborough, more outlining, more specific than what is here.
Even under the town manager's report, I did identify the broad categories that fall under each one of those 5.
Okay. And so when Southborough goes to that town meeting, they'll also be voting on their IMA for the rec center as well.
Again, in terms of next steps, I think this is the beginning of a longer discussion, though there is a time limit to it, because Southborough wants to take this to their next town meeting, annual town meeting in March. So, by way of suggestion, we can review this internally as staff with town council and bring forth a proposal for the select board's consideration.
Yeah, I think in the survey that budget or town meeting survey that you did, that fixing the PFAS solution was really high prioritized by the residents, and I would share that sentiment. So I do think town council and town staff should review their proposal and see what we would want to agree to, knowing that we're at the mercy of Southborough as well. For their town meeting voters, yeah. Does everyone agree with town staff?
Yes.
Go ahead
Absolutely.
and look through and make recommendations.
Is somehow Southborough our only or best option?
At this moment, yes. They've been a good neighbor. They did allocate some of their water to save Ashland. Was it 2-3 years ago? And I think at this point, yes, they are the only option.
The only option, yeah. I wasn't suggesting they were not somehow good neighbors. I understand their position too. But
And the filtration system that we're trying to get installed that we authorized last year, that it's a short-term solution, it couldn't be a permanent solution, is that correct?
Yeah, the thinking back then, and through the chair, John, feel free to jump in. The thinking back then was even the cost of the filtration system, if you consider some of the other issues that we're dealing with in our wells, was going to be exorbitant.
Okay. But we could do it for a few years or so to identify a more permanent solution.
Yes. And through the chair, John, earlier question was, we started the process of procuring components of the filtration system, put them out to bid, totally designed. I believe we've ordered them.
Through the chair, the filtration vessels have, the bid has been awarded, so those are on hand. It's the other components, and we're waiting for 2 permits from DEP. The design is complete, the vessels are ready. Once we have the permits, we can put it out to bid, and we can get a contractor and start that construction.
How are we going to account for the increase in costs? From 600,000 to 1.2?
So through the chair, we have, I guess, 2 options that I'm
you
aware
know
of.
what, it occurs to me that folks at home can't hear you as well.
And sorry I missed the questions, we were regrouping on the herbicide issue. 2 options that I'm aware of, one would be to go back to town meeting for the additional funds, and the other would be to go for ARPA funds to cover the differential. We're always keeping an eye out also for any funding that's out there for DEP grants, but those have typically been for reimbursal.
Through the chair, I'm sorry, what was the second option you mentioned?
ARPA funds, American Recovery.
American Recovery Act, is that what it was? Okay. So there might be opportunities through that? That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And through the chair, I think all are good that you are on top of things, which I appreciate.
Thank you.
Just making sure that, timing-wise, we can march along well with Southborough's town meeting decisions, our town meeting pending decisions, what we need to, and whatever estimate analysis we need to do prior to that. I'm sure you have all these on your radar, but the time kind of flies with 3-4 months before the town meeting. So let's just make sure we are marching along well.
Through the chair, we have the direction from the board on how to proceed with a letter of intent from the town of Southborough, which we will do. We've also got last May's town meeting appropriated $1.3 million for the design of the MWRA connection. So once we have that letter of intent and town meeting vote from the town of Southborough, we will proceed without delay with the design.
Okay.
Thank you.
But then the actual cost and connection will be another town meeting vote in a future year, I guess.
Correct.
After the design, okay. But we all want clean water for everyone, so that, and that's a priority, so. Well, but if there's grants, that'll be great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure what we're hearing from people.
Okay, so, okay, anything else on the town manager's report?
In fact, in relation to the last topic and also a nice transition to invitations and updates, we still have our annual town meeting. I just wanted to mention Representative Jim McGovern's visit on Friday, and that part of the discussion with Jim McGovern would be if there are federal funds to help us.
Yeah, that would be good.
This project.
I just wanted to confirm, is that still on? I know they had a busy week in Congress last week, and I just kind of had changed.
I was nervous too. I did send an email this afternoon, confirmed that he's coming.
Okay, great. I look forward to that. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
A lot of drama.
Yeah.
And through the chair, I think our state rep, newly elected state rep will be there too.
Correct.
So we could appeal for both federal and state funds.
Yeah.
Maybe he could speed up the DEP, or the DPU, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, and then annual town meeting, do we want to discuss any bylaw changes? I feel like we've had a very long meeting. I don't think I have any bylaw changes since last time. I don't know.
I do not have
You don't
bylaw
have-
changes
Okay.
to suggest.
Okay.
Just as a reminder, we will be recommending that the board consider including the Alteros TIF.
Oh, yeah, if that'll be ready, okay.
Yes.
So I'm certainly open to that, if that's ready to submit to town meeting. Do you need us? And so on the 24th, we would vote to recommend the TIF and then potentially that leash law change?
Yeah, leash law change. The short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals, okay.
Okay.
So if anyone has questions on those, have them ready before the 24th, I guess. Or does anyone have questions on them now? I guess I should.
I don't.
I don't think I do.
I think we discussed these.
At the last time. Okay. And for members of the public should know the town meeting warrant is not open now until January 31st. If members of the public or other boards and committees want to submit articles, they should get those in soon. Let's see. Okay, anything else on annual town meeting? No? Okay, so we can move on to liaison reports and invites, I think.
So I wanted to say just a couple of words. The town of Hopkinton lost two iconic women since we last met. Mary Harrington, I think I learned so much from Mary when I first got involved, and she contributed to town and town government for decades, and always had a driving passion for Hopkinton at the heart of everything she did and her family. So our condolences go out to Mary's family, and deep appreciation for the years of service that she provided the town. And then we lost Doris Carver too, and Doris was also one of my sort of oldest contacts in town. She was married to the chief of police at the time, before my time, but I could always count on Doris in particular to keep my thinking straight on any topic. She was very direct and very friendly and very invested, and she also had a tremendous fun-loving spirit, and she was just an amazing contributor to the community. So just wanted to think of both of them in a special way, and sorry for the losses for their families. And then I have one update on the Trails Committee. They would actually like to be scheduled to provide an update to the Select Board in the February-March timeframe. sort of in anticipation, or definitely in anticipation of their annual meeting for the public, looking for input from us on the work that they're doing and the work that they want to be doing going forward, but also as an invitation to the public to make sure that it's on their radar to participate in their more formal annual town meeting. So if we could get them scheduled, that would probably be.
So that's the Trails Coordination and Management Committee.
That's correct. I know, I should have said the whole title because there are different trails committees.
I did not realize they had an annual meeting, except that some of them.
Yeah, but anyway, their press is really to make sure that, has been to make sure that the broader community is really aware of the rich resource that we have in the trails, and so it's been fun to hear about their work this year, and I think the public will appreciate it, so.
Sounds good. Mary Jo?
Well, I want to also send my condolences to Mary Harrington's family and Doris Carver's family. They were wonderful women, just really great women. I know Doris and I had many corned beef and cabbage dinners at Cornell's on St. Patrick's Day, and she was funny. She used to say, I always look at the people holding signs on the corners, and if I see you, I have to give everything a second thought. And she was great. And Mary was a good friend of mine. In fact, she encouraged me to run for this board. And her history of the town was just incredible. She used to do a Veterans Day at the Veterans in the morning, history of the various people that went to war for this town and for this country, and she had a really deep love for Hopkinton, and she'll be missed.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say I share the same, and I have met wonderful ladies and heard a lot about them, and they're a legend. So I want to offer the condolence to their family and friends as well. And I think, they definitely laid out a lot of wonderful work for the town and made the town, contributed to making the town as great as it is. So, thank you.
I just want to say my liaison report was on the Sustainable Green Committee, of which I think they did a wonderful job with their presentation. I was looking forward to seeing it, and we had talked about it, and they did a great job. I'm proud of you guys.
Okay.
For ESBC, I think we had the recent updates. Next week there are 2 meetings. Norman and I are planning to go. And for library, there's a meeting on the 17th. I'm planning to join us. So more updates to come.
Okay. All right. And then for me, let's see, I wanted to know that the Senior Center is having the puzzle competition this weekend, and my family and I have been practicing. We are very excited.
What is that, Saturday?
It is Sunday, I believe.
Sunday.
You're practicing? That's
Oh, yeah, we did 3 puzzles this weekend. Yeah. We timed ourselves.
We'll be rooting for you.
So 2 p.m. on Sunday at the Senior Center, it's a team puzzle competition, so we're looking forward to that.
That's awesome.
And then the following weekend, after Martin Luther King Day, there will be a Martin Luther King Day Interfaith event at the Islamic Mezzanine on Wood Street, and that is going to be, I believe, at noon on Sunday the 22nd. And then the same day, there is a Lunar New Year celebration starting at 5 p.m. From the Hopkinton Chinese American Association, and that's in person this year. It's the first time in a while. Both of these events, I think, were both remote during COVID, so that'll be nice. That's us. So those are both on the 22nd. So a lot to look forward to. And we are attending the school committee meeting, a joint meeting with Appropriations and School Committee and Select Board on Thursday at 7 p.m., which will be the public hearing on the school budget. So we will be on TV again. And that's
Another light discussion.
I know. They should leave the school committee in the hot seat that night.
And tomorrow night, they're having a presentation on their
Budget?
at the senior center.
Oh, they're having, in the daytime at the senior center tomorrow?
I'm not sure what time it is. I'm
Okay.
gonna have to
So 2 opportunities to hear about the school budget this week.
Wonderful, busy week.
It is
busy.
And then Jim McGovern on Friday, we're going to meet with
What's
them.
on Friday?
Jim McGovern, I think, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
Is it 11:30?
11:30.
11:30 Friday, okay.
Mary, you wanted to confirm, the venue is here, right?
Yes, right here, we're still going through how we'll set up this room.
Okay.
We may talk offline. I think we should have one of you introduce him.
Oh, sure.
You gonna be there?
Yes.
Yep.
He's got to be.
Actually, I didn't take the time off of work yet, because I was waiting to see if his schedule would change, but I should be able
Yes,
to get off.
we're so excited that he's coming.
Okay, all right, I think, any other future agenda items that are not covered today?
Not at this time.
Nope. I think we've got enough on our plates.
Actually,
All right, so we're ready for a motion to adjourn then?
Oh, so moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Okay.
I did my research.